James Harris dedicated his life to his company, but his daughter's betrayal destroyed it all. Lauren struck secret deals and dismantled his business, revealing deep family conflicts and hidden resentment he never saw coming. What happens next will shock even those who have seen it all. But let's start from the beginning. James Harris was the embodiment of how one can build an empire from nothing. Born into a modest family, his determination and entrepreneurial spirit allowed him to create a tech company that quickly rose to become one of the market leaders. Not only did James secure his place among the most influential people in the country, but he also realized his dream of building a company capable of competing on a global scale. He accomplished this through sheer perseverance, hard work, and an ability to spot opportunities where others only saw obstacles. Despite reaching the pinnacle of success, James knew that what truly mattered was the future of his empire. He understood that it wasn't enough just to maintain the business. He had to prepare the next leader to not only sustain, but expand his legacy. His choice was clear: his only daughter, Lauren. From an early age, she had been surrounded by every privilege and advantage that came with being the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the country. Her childhood was one of luxury: private schools, trips abroad, and attendance at the most prestigious universities. James ensured she had the best of everything money could offer. James wanted Lauren to have every chance to succeed, and he saw her not just as his daughter, but as the future of the company he had built over the years. In his mind, she was the ideal candidate to be his successor. Lauren graduated from Harvard with honors, and her diploma further solidified James' belief that she was ready to take on the immense responsibility ahead. But from Lauren's perspective, things weren't as simple. Despite her academic success and outward confidence, she had always felt the weight of her father's expectations. Her life had been carefully mapped out according to James' plan: private tutoring, strict discipline, and an elite social circle. While she achieved great things, Lauren couldn't shake the feeling that her path had been predetermined by someone else. Her father saw her as the perfect successor, but increasingly, Lauren felt like she was just a piece in his dream. Lauren was intelligent and ambitious, but her heart was never truly in business. She had always been drawn to creativity, art, and travel, but she knew that different things were expected of her. So, when James announced that he intended to pass leadership of the company to her, Lauren understood that she couldn't disappoint him. He had invested too much hope and belief in her for her to simply walk away. This moment became a turning point in her life. Despite her inner doubts, she accepted the challenge and began learning how to run the company. Initially, Lauren followed her father's instructions diligently. She attended meetings, negotiated with key partners, and learned to manage the intricate workings of the company. Her decisions were thoughtful, and she did everything she could to meet expectations. James was proud. His daughter seemed to step into the role of a leader with ease, handling the business with the same confidence he had. But with each passing day, Lauren felt more out of place. She often caught herself zoning out during meetings, pretending to be interested while her true desires were far removed from conference rooms and financial reports. She was successful in the eyes of the world, but inside, Lauren increasingly felt that she was living a life not of her own choosing. A few years had passed since Emily celebrated her 21st birthday, and Jonathan continued to live with the belief that his daughter, despite all her mischief and whims, remained the same child he had given everything to in order to shield her from life's hardships. Jonathan's company, one of the largest in the country, continued to thrive, generating billions in revenue. He was confident that everything was under his control, as it always had been. But one morning didn't start as usual. Jonathan was sitting in his office, reviewing the latest financial reports, when his chief financial advisor, Robert, walked in. Tension was evident on his face. He never came to Jonathan with such serious expressions unless there was a genuinely important reason. "Jonathan, we need to talk, and I think you should brace yourself for some bad news," Robert began, handing him a folder of documents. Jonathan, still confident that his company was unshakable, opened the folder with a casual air. But as his eyes scanned the pages, his expression changed. Company accounts, assets, offshore transfers, millions of dollars had disappeared over the past few months. At first, Jonathan thought it was a mistake, perhaps a gross accounting error, but every transaction had been recorded and confirmed by bank statements. "This can't be true," he muttered. "Someone from my team must be involved." Robert sighed heavily. "We conducted a thorough investigation. We traced all the transfers and, Jonathan, I don't even know how to say this. The person who has been secretly funneling money out of your company is Emily." These words struck Jonathan like lightning. He couldn't believe it. His own daughter? The one he had built all of this for? It seemed impossible, too cruel and implausible to be true. But the evidence was undeniable. The signatures, the data, the paper trail, all pointed to Emily. She had been siphoning millions from his accounts and transferring them to offshore accounts. Moreover, she had started selling off company assets without his knowledge, secretly dismantling the business her father had built from scratch. Jonathan felt his heart race. Memories flashed through his mind of how he had always supported his daughter, protected her from any danger, and opened every door for her. And now it turned out that Emily had used his trust and access to the company to destroy his empire. "This can't be true," he repeated bitterly. "Are you sure it's not a mistake? Could someone have used her name?" Robert silently shook his head, handing over additional documents that backed everything up. Jonathan took them with trembling hands and began to read, still hoping to find some loophole, some inconsistency that would explain the situation as an error. But with each new page, the realization that Emily had indeed done this became more and more clear. The pain of betrayal overwhelmed his mind. He had always believed that his relationship with his daughter was strong, that she appreciated everything he had done for her. After all, he had given her his life, his soul, and dedicated everything to her well-being. But now Jonathan realized how deeply mistaken he had been. His love and generosity had turned into a weakness that Emily had exploited for her own enrichment and the destruction of what he had built. Jonathan sat in his office, unable to recover from the shock. The world he had spent so long building for his daughter had crumbled in an instant. It was around this time that Eric entered Lauren's life. Eric was an ambitious and charismatic businessman who had already made a name for himself in his industry. With charm and a knack for persuasion, Eric had a way of drawing people in, and he quickly found a connection with Lauren. They met at an elite business event, and it didn't take long for Eric to see that Lauren was more than just a successful woman. She was someone hiding an internal struggle. He sensed her uncertainty and saw it as an opportunity to set his own plans in motion. Eric was shrewd and saw Lauren as a key to fulfilling his own ambitions. He realized that through her, he could achieve greater influence and success. To do this, he needed to win her trust. Gradually, Eric started to spend more time with her, inviting her to lunches and business dinners. His conversations were not just about business. He dug deeper into personal matters, listening to her frustrations, her doubts, and what troubled her. "You know, Lauren, you could be running this company your own way," Eric said one evening, as they dined in a luxurious restaurant. "James is a great businessman, but his methods are outdated. You could accomplish so much more if you operated on your terms." Lauren listened carefully, feeling a strange sense of validation in his words. Eric's thoughts mirrored some of her own, long-buried desires. "But how could I go against his wishes?" Lauren responded, her voice tinged with hesitation. "He's invested his whole life into this company." Eric gave her a knowing look and smiled. "You need to realize, Lauren, that true freedom means taking your fate into your own hands. This is your life. You can't follow the path someone else has set for you forever. You can make this company your own, run it the way you see fit. There's no need to be afraid." These words struck a chord with Lauren. She had always tried to live up to her father's expectations, but deep down, she knew she didn't share his vision of the business. Eric's words resonated with something inside her that she had suppressed for years. She began to wonder, what if he was right? What if she could make the company more modern and successful, but on her own terms? These thoughts began to take root in her mind, slowly but surely. With each new conversation with Eric, Lauren grew more convinced that her future didn't lie in merely following her father's wishes, but in creating something that was truly hers. Eric, for his part, skillfully nudged her toward the idea that her path must be independent. Lauren saw in him someone who could help her find her freedom and her true self, without realizing that behind his words lay a hidden agenda: to use her for his personal gain. Eric became her confidant, and in a way, her mentor. He continued to feed her the idea that to be truly free, she had to stop fearing her father's disapproval. Slowly but surely, Lauren began taking the first steps towards seizing control of the company, not as an heir but as a true leader with her own vision. Under Eric's influence, Lauren began to steadily reshape the company to align with her own vision. Each day, her actions became more and more distinct from the principles James had instilled in her. She began to secretly renegotiate partnerships, proposing more aggressive and risky deals without consulting her father. Lauren found herself making independent decisions more frequently, bypassing James entirely. She felt stronger and more confident, convinced that her vision for the company's future was superior to her father's. Eric continued to fuel her confidence, asserting that she deserved more and that her time had come to take full control. His manipulations were subtle but effective. He told Lauren that her father was too conservative, that his methods were outdated and stifling the company's potential growth. These conversations slowly eroded Lauren's trust in James, driving a wedge between them as she distanced herself from his leadership approach. Lauren began transferring assets to offshore accounts to hide her actions from James. She forged new partnerships with companies that benefited not just the business, but also her and Eric personally. Inside the company, she was already acting as the primary leader, gradually sidelining her father. To James, everything seemed perfectly normal. He trusted his daughter so much that he didn't question her decisions or interfere in her work. James was convinced Lauren was handling everything well. At meetings and public events, she appeared professional and confident. The company showed promising growth in a short period, which delighted James. However, beneath this facade of prosperity, something darker was brewing. Lauren had stopped discussing important matters with her father, holding secret meetings and signing deals that James wouldn't discover until months later. One day, while preparing for another major deal, James, out of habit, began reviewing the company's financial reports to ensure everything was on track. As he flipped through the pages, something unusual caught his eye. Accounts he didn't recognize, assets that had suddenly vanished from the records. At first he thought it might be a mistake. Perhaps the accountants had missed something. But the deeper he delved into the documents, the more concerned he became. Determined to uncover the truth, James ordered an internal audit. A few days later, he received the results, and they were devastating. Millions of dollars had been siphoned from the company's main accounts and transferred to offshore accounts. Each transaction had been carefully concealed, but upon closer examination, it became clear who was behind it: Lauren. The signatures, the contracts, the transfers, everything pointed directly to her. She had been quietly draining the company's resources behind his back. James's world crumbled. He sat in his office, rereading the reports over and over, refusing to believe what he was seeing. His own daughter, the one he had built everything for, had betrayed him. Her actions not only shattered his trust, they threatened the very foundation of the company he had spent decades building. He couldn't comprehend how Lauren could have gone so far, how she could risk everything he had created for her. These thoughts tormented him. James reflected on raising Lauren, on how he had supported her every step of the way. He had believed he had prepared her for success, that she would continue his work with the same love and dedication that he had. But now, it was clear she saw the company only as a tool for her own gain. Her ambitions, spurred by Eric's influence, had led her to destroy what he had worked so long and hard to build. For James, this wasn't just a professional blow, it was a personal devastation. He realized that despite all the care and love he had poured into Lauren, he had never truly understood her motives. She had become someone he no longer recognized. This wasn't just a business betrayal. It was a personal wound that left deep scars on his soul. With every new report, with every new detail, James understood that this betrayal couldn't be undone. Lauren had gone too far. James Harris sat at his massive oak desk, his mind racing as he struggled to comprehend the betrayal that had just unraveled before him. He had only hours to think about everything: his daughter's treachery, The very person he believed to be his greatest achievement, now threatening to destroy everything he had built. His heart felt unbearably heavy, as if a weight had been placed on it that he could never lift. Everything he had spent his life building was now crumbling from within, and he never expected the blow to come from the one person he loved the most. Lauren's betrayal overshadowed all his accomplishments, and now he faced the hardest question of all. How could he confront her? How could he speak to the one he trusted more than anyone, knowing that she had deceived him so completely? As James sat, his fists clenched and unclenched in frustration. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears as the clock on the wall ticked away the moments before Lauren would arrive. When she finally entered the office, his gaze instantly fixed on her face. There was no regret, no apology in her eyes, only a cold, unshaken confidence. She knew why her father had called for her, and she had no intention of offering the explanations he hoped for. Lauren stood tall, her arms crossed over her chest, her expression as unreadable as stone, as though what was happening didn't personally affect her at all. "Why, Lauren?" James's voice trembled, a mixture of disbelief and deep hurt. "How could you do this? I gave you everything, my life, my dreams, this company I built from nothing. You were my hope, my legacy. Why did you betray me?" His words hung heavy in the air, like thunder rumbling through a tense silence. James desperately wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding, that she had been misled or coerced. He clung to the idea that this could all be fixed, that there was still something genuine between them that her actions hadn't completely destroyed. But the coldness in her eyes told him otherwise. Lauren met his gaze steadily and spoke in a calm, detached voice that cut him deeper than any scream could have. "You always wanted me to live by your rules, to follow your plans," she began, showing no sign of remorse. "But I can't do it anymore. I deserve to live my own life, make my own decisions. I won't be your puppet any longer." Her words pierced James like a knife. He had never imagined that his daughter, the one he loved more than anyone in the world, had felt like a prisoner to his dreams. There was more than firmness in her voice. There was bitterness. Bitterness she had apparently carried for years without him noticing. "A puppet?" James's voice cracked with emotion. "I gave you everything, Lauren. I built this empire for you so you could have a better life than I did. It was all for you." Lauren's expression didn't soften. She stared at him with a resolve that made James's heart ache. "For me? Or for you?" She shot back, her voice unwavering. "You acted like everything was for me, but it was always about you. You wanted me to continue your life, your dream. But I'm not you, Dad. I don't want to live your life." James sank back into his chair, the energy draining from him as if he had been deflated. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. He had never once asked Lauren what she wanted. He had assumed he knew better, that his dream should become her dream. To him it was obvious, but to Lauren it had been a set of golden chains. "You betrayed me, Lauren," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You've put everything I built at risk. You took what I gave you and used it against me." Lauren exhaled sharply, almost as if she had been expecting this accusation. "This isn't betrayal," she replied coldly. "It's freedom. I'm not going to live by your rules anymore, Dad. I want my own life. You've controlled everything for so long that you forgot I'm my own person. I have the right to make my own decisions." Her words felt final, like a sentence being handed down. James understood in that moment that Lauren had made up her mind a long time ago, and nothing he could say would change it. His whole existence, his life's work, his legacy, seemed to slip through his fingers like sand. It wasn't just his daughter who had betrayed him. It felt as if life itself had failed to meet his expectations. "And what now?" James asked quietly, finally lifting his eyes to meet hers. "What are you going to do?" Lauren looked at him, her decision already made, her future already set. "I'm going to live my life, Dad," she said, her tone resolute. "And that means we're going our separate ways." James sat in silence, absorbing the reality that he had lost not only his company, but also his daughter. In the aftermath of that fateful confrontation, James Harris found himself unable to regain control of his company. The threads that had once held his empire together unraveled rapidly, and each day he watched helplessly as his life's work crumbled. Lauren, driven by her desire to claim freedom at any cost, continued her actions behind his back, stopping at nothing to achieve her independence. Each day, Lauren made increasingly risky deals with the company's competitors, handing over assets that James had spent years protecting. She dismantled the partnerships that had been cornerstones of the business's success, relationships that had taken decades to build. The moves were so swift and destructive that James barely had time to comprehend what was happening before it was too late. His once stable empire teetered on the edge of collapse. His reputation, meticulously built over decades, was destroyed in an instant. Rumors about internal strife and chaos within the company spread through the business world like wildfire. Clients and investors began to abandon him en masse. Every morning brought new news of contracts being cancelled, long-standing agreements being terminated, and the company's stock value plummeting. For James, this wasn't just a business defeat, it was personal humiliation. His name, once synonymous with success, now became a cautionary tale of failure and mistrust. The business community, which had once admired his accomplishments, now watched his downfall with cold detachment. With the company on the brink of bankruptcy, Lauren made her final move. She sold off the remaining valuable assets to rivals, transferred vast sums of money to offshore accounts, and left the country, abandoning her father with the ruins of his empire. Her departure was as abrupt as her betrayal. For Lauren, it was an act of ultimate separation from her past, a declaration of her independence. She felt no regret, and she didn't look back. Her interests had always lain elsewhere, and she no longer saw any reason to remain in a world built for her, but not by her. James was left alone, surrounded by the wreckage of his life. His house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt cold and empty. The grand halls and corridors, which had once symbolized his success, became constant reminders of everything he had lost. He spent hours in his office, staring at the wall filled with photographs and awards, reminiscing about the times when he had believed Lauren would carry on his legacy, that she would be the one to ensure his name lived on after him. But now, it all felt like an illusion. He had lost not only his company, but also his faith in people. Every betrayal, every broken partnership, was now linked in his mind to the image of Lauren. But the most painful loss wasn't the business. It was the realization that he had lost his daughter. The one who was supposed to carry on his dream, his legacy, had chosen a different path, one that left no room for him. Sitting in his empty office, James understood that despite all the wealth and power he had accumulated over his life, he had lost the most important thing of all, his daughter's trust and love. It felt as though everything he had done for her was in vain. He had wanted to protect her, to ensure she had the best possible future, but in the end, he wasn't the man she wanted him to be. His home, once a symbol of his triumphs, had become a prison, haunted by memories of better days. He wandered through the empty rooms, recalling the times when Lauren had been a joyful little girl, full of hope and dreams. He thought of their conversations about the future, about the day when she would take over the company. Now, all those dreams were shattered, just like their relationship. James Harris's story didn't end with the fall of his company, but with the collapse of his family. Day after day, he sat in his vast mansion, surrounded by emptiness and solitude, realizing that the wealth and success he had built over his lifetime couldn't save the most precious thing, his relationship with his daughter.